Have you ever heard of mercenaries who kill entire squads with nothing but their shadows? What about a unit so deadly that the entire galaxy banned their name from contracts because no one survives to tell the tale? When Captain Zaresh and his elite mercenary team took a contract to eliminate 12 human soldiers on Osiris 9, they thought it was just a quick paycheck. But within hours, they realized they weren't hunting anyone. They were being hunted by the darkness itself. The Ghost Division isn't just a unit. They are a nightmare of tactics appearing without a trace, retreating without a sound, leaving behind only one thing still alive: fear. This isn't a story of victory. It's the tale of a legendary failure that rewrote the mercenary laws of the galaxy. Because there are those who don't need to kill to be undefeated. The Death Contract. Zaresh sat at the head of the long steel table, his clawed fingers tapping a slow, heavy rhythm against the cold metal surface. The bronze scales on his arms gleamed under the harsh artificial lights of the command ship's war room. A holographic contract hovered before him, numbers flickering in blue light. And the final number, the payment, made his inner eyelids blink reflexively. More zeros than he'd seen in any standard cycle. The mission sounded strangely simple, and that was exactly what bothered him. Let me get this straight. Zaresh's deep voice rumbled like thunder echoing through stone. You want us to eliminate a small human outpost. Just 12 soldiers. Across from him, the client's representative was nothing but a shadow, a shimmering silhouette without face or form, barely outlined by the signal projection. It nodded once, silent but absolute. Correct. They are interfering with our mining operations on Osiris 9. Around the table sat the deadliest warriors' credits could buy, each from a different species, each a nightmare made flesh. Vex, a massive Kari with blood-streaked red skin and arms like stone pillars, let out a booming laugh that shook the steel walls. Humans? Their bones snap if you look at them too hard. We crushed the planetary defenses of Tarus Prime in under 3 hours. These meatbags won't last 10 minutes. Kalara didn't laugh. The Voidborn assassin, a being born between stars, had eyes of pure black, no pupils, no whites, just twin abysses that devoured light. She studied the contract's text, expressionless. They're listed as special forces. What does that mean? She asked, voice cold as vacuum. Military specialists, the shadow answered. Nothing your team can't handle. Captain Zaresh's reputation precedes you. Zaresh flicked his tongue out, tasting the synthetic air. Something was off, a tension in the room he couldn't define. But the money was crystal clear, enough for every single one of them to retire immediately. They lack heavy weaponry, the shadow added. No orbital support, only standard gear. You have 3 days, no witnesses, no survivors. From the far corner of the room came a gravelly voice. Heads turned. All eyes landed on Thorth, battle-worn warrior of the Vexillian race. His 4 eyes, each a different shape and shade, shimmered like dim stars in a desert night. I advise caution, he said slowly, as though each word was carved from stone. Merrick, the mnemonic strategist with an enlarged cranium housing over 64 tactical processors, chuckled dismissively. They're humans, old man, soft as silk, bones like paper, one decent blast, and they'll scatter like dust. Thor didn't respond at first. He shook his head slowly, an act rare among his kind, reserved for things that transcended logic and calculation. Not just humans, he said at last. I've seen them fight. They're different. They don't fight to win, they fight to haunt. The room fell silent. No one laughed. Vex tried to force another chuckle, but it died mid-throat. Zaresh wasn't one to believe in legends, but he trusted Thor. The old warrior never spoke without reason. Still, the payment, it was immense. And the rest of the crew was looking at him now, waiting. One command would set them on a path that could mean either fortune or folklore. We accept the contract, Zaresh declared, placing his scaled palm against the hologram. A green pulse flashed seal confirmed. We depart for Osiris 9 in 6 hours. Standard elimination protocol, leave nothing behind. As the team filed out of the war room, checking weapons and reviewing strategy, Zaresh noticed Thor hadn't moved. He stood still like a monument of forgotten warnings. "Something else on your mind, old friend?" Zaresh asked. All four of Thor's eyes blinked in unison of exilian gestures, signaling deep, inescapable dread. Special forces don't think like soldiers. They don't move like warriors. They are something else. Thor's voice rumbled softer than silence. Zaresh placed a hand on his shoulder. 12 of them, 17 of us. Odds are in our favor. Thor murmured as he turned away. Odds mean nothing to them. Zaresh watched him go, a chill sliding down his spine like a forgotten prophecy, but he brushed it aside. Just humans, 12 fragile beings. In the shadows, the ship disengaged from orbit, its nose tilted toward Osiris 9, carrying with it confidence, firepower, and a contract signed in green light and greed. None of them knew that this journey would soon become the new definition of failure and the beginning of a legend told in fear. Phantoms in the dust. Their ship touched down in absolute silence, landing in a rocky valley 3 miles from the human outpost. No words were exchanged, no flares, no mechanical whirring, only the sound of Osiris 9's 3 moons casting their eerie bluish light over the knife-edged stones below. Zaresh peered through his tactical scope. The image was crystal clear, barren land, dust carried by whispering winds, and low hills encircling the target. In the cold emptiness, the artificial lights of the human outpost glimmered like weak, stars-faint, harmless. But he no longer underestimated them. Not after Thor's warning. Not after that chill in the war room. "Perfect landing zone, Captain," Merrick reported from the control bay. His voice was fast, confident confidence born from a brain that could run 64 simultaneous combat simulations. "They don't know we're here," Sarkeesh nodded. "Shiv, you go first." Shiva Shadow Treader nodded silently. His pale gray skin quivered slightly, then began to fade, like ink dissolving in water. Within seconds, he was gone to nothing, remained but a faint shimmer on the ground, like lost light retreating from the world. "I'll locate their communication center." Shiv's voice came through the comms, echoing from the invisible. "We'll report in 20 minutes. Zaresh nodded, eyes fixed on the terrain ahead. "Remember the rule. Comms must be cut before engagement. No witnesses. Leave nothing. No mistakes." Shiv's phantom presence vanished like a cold breeze. The rest of the mercenary team began prepping. Weapons were checked, plasma rifles lubricated, boosters charged, bioscanners calibrated. Each had slain hundreds before, but tonight the air carried a different scent. The sharp tang of metal mixed with the vague sense of something wrong, something watching. 20 minutes passed, no signal. 30, still nothing. Kalera, silent since landing, furrowed her brow. He should have checked in. That distance doesn't justify delay. Zaresh touched his comms. "Shiv, report. Status?" "Only static." "He might have found something and got pulled in," whispered Drenthi, second Shadow Treader. Without waiting, he too began to dissolve into the darkness. "I'll locate him." Another 10 minutes passed. Nothing. No return. Just silence stretching longer, sharper, heavier. It began to erode the strongest wills. "Something's wrong," Thor muttered. All 4 of his eyes blinked erratically, an ancient Vexillian signal of internal alarm. "Nonsense," Vex growled. "They're just humans." He hoisted his massive plasma cannon onto his shoulder, the red veins of his thick skin glowing faintly beneath a field of static charge. "I'll storm their center, myself tear them apart if I have to." "Wait," Zaresh began, but Vex was already gone, his massive form a bolt of living rage charging across the terrain. Every remaining team member activated sensors, tracking Vex's vitals. Heart rate, oxygen saturation, movement, velocity, all spiking with predatory power, like a beast moments before the kill. But then, everything stopped. Abruptly, his vitals flatlined. 0, A red dot blinked on the screen. "What the hell?" Zaresh barked, his voice suddenly dry. "Signal lost," Calera confirmed, her eyes locked on the monitor. "He's gone. Full termination." "No, that's not possible," Merrick whispered. He had dual-layer armor. His neck was reinforced with high-density alloy. How could anyone? Data confirms. One shot, pierced neck armor, right through the 0.4-inch joint in the collar plate. Silence. Then, faces began to shift, confusion, giving way to dread, anger, panic. Zaresh felt it again, that creeping cold up his spine. A chill not even the bloodiest battle had ever given him. "They knew we were coming," Calera whispered. She bent down, retrieving something from the dust, a fragment of Shiv's ID tag, slick with thick, dark green blood. And they were ready. The team fell back toward the ship. No one spoke. No one dared speculate what lurked out there. 3 were gone. No one saw the enemy. No one heard a sound. What hunted them was invisible, precise, and terrifyingly patient. The hunter becomes the hunted. The ship's door slammed shut behind them with a sound like a hammer striking stone. No one spoke. No more jokes. No frustrated sighs. Only the chaotic beeping of biosensors sounding red alerts across the control room. 3 missing, no final words, no last transmissions, no visual of the enemy. That made it worse than hell. Zaresh stood frozen, one hand clenched tightly around the tactical control grip, as if he could crush the metal under sheer tension. His eyes locked onto the digital map-gray terrain sprawled before them, devoid of irregular readings. No energy pulses, no movement spikes, not a single clue left behind from the massacre that had just occurred. Every monitoring system claimed normal, and that, more than anything, terrified him. "We can't wait here to die," Calera said, her long-range rifle gripped tightly in both hands, her voice as dry as ash. "They know how to erase every trace. They're manipulating the field. If we don't strike back, we'll die, not even knowing why." Zaresh nodded. She was right, but he also knew this was no longer a simple manhunt. This was a psychological trial, and they were being led step by step into a darkened maze with no exit. That first night, the team took shifts, standing guard, eyes locked on every entrance of the ship, but nothing came. No sound, no footprints. Only the whistling wind and the cold blue light of Osiris 9's moons casting jagged shadows over rocks like serrated blades. Thermal sensors picked up faint motion everywhere, but never enough to define a shape. A small bird, a pocket of hot air, or a deliberately planted sensor glitch? The next morning, a violent explosion ripped through the northern ridge, the area they'd mined for defense. The team stormed out, weapons raised, nerves coiled tight, but what they found stopped them cold. One of their own mines had been carefully removed and rearmed 30 meters from its original location. "That's not possible," whispered a Quilleri soldier. "The mines are pressure, locked to the terrain. You can't move them without detonating them." "And yet, it's moved," Calera said, her eyes scanning the rock formations. "Whoever did this doesn't obey our physics." No one was injured, but that only made the message louder. A silent warning. We can get close. We can touch your defenses, and you're still alive, because we allow it. That night, everything fell further apart. Thor, while on perimeter patrol, discovered a foreign device in his personal medkit, a tiny implant, embedded dead center in one of his sterile bandages. "This wasn't there during the morning checks," he said quietly. "Someone accessed my supplies. I didn't even notice." Zaresh slammed his fist on the command console. "We're being watched, every breath, every move, and we don't know how they're doing it." At the same time, Merrick the tactical savant began to show signs of mental collapse. He sat curled in a corner, his enlarged skull trembling, flickering with warning red biolights. I can't calculate anymore," he stammered. "I ran 64 simulations. None of them match their behavior. They're beyond prediction. It's like they know what I'm going to think." Zaresh stepped forward, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "Stay calm. Breathe. We'll find a way." "No," Merrick screamed. "You don't understand. They're not playing by the rules. They break logic. They don't act like any species. They know our next move before we even think it." Thor laid a hand on Merrick's back, gentle, but with the weight of ancient truth. "That's why I warned you," he said. "These aren't ordinary soldiers. This is the Ghost Division." Zaresh looked around the room. Every face now wore the same expression: terror. Not fear of death. They had all danced with death countless times. No, this was something else. Fear of the unexplainable. Fear of fighting something that defied science, defied strategy. Ghosts that had tactics, awareness, and a chilling intent to strip them of every layer of control. Zaresh sat in his private corner. The first time in his long and brutal career, he felt fear deep in his bones. 3 were already gone. Still, they hadn't laid eyes on a single enemy. Not one clean shot fired. Not one plan succeeded. This was no longer a mission. This was the reversal of the hunt. And the hunted were now them. Systems breakdown. The second day on Osiris 9 didn't begin with a sunrise, began with exhaustion. No one had slept. Bloodshot eyes, nerves stretched taut like wires. Every team member stared at every flicker of light, every gust of wind. But the wind carried no scent, and the light held no form. Kalara was the first to report the change. Her hand trembled slightly, something that hadn't happened in over 700 missions. "I can't hold my rifle steady," she whispered, her pitch-black eyes glinting with something eerily close to panic. Zaresh tried to steady her. "You need rest." "No," she said, shaking her head. "If I close my eyes, I'll dream about them. And I don't want to see the face of something that can do this." No one disagreed. They understood. All of them were beginning to feel it, to not just fear of death, but fear of not knowing what was killing them. By late morning, Drent the second Shadow Treader reappeared outside the ship, stripped bare, no armor, no weapons. His body was covered in a translucent, faintly glowing green slime. He smiled, but there was no one in his eyes. "They didn't kill me," Dren whispered. "They let me go. They want me to tell you." "Tell us what?" Zaresh stepped forward, gripping his shoulder. They said, "We are watching." Then Dren collapsed, eyes wide open, heartbeat rapid but brain activity flatlined. Merrick ran a scan. He only shook his head. "Extreme psychological trauma," he said. "No physical torture. They didn't break his body, they broke his identity." Thor stepped forward, holding a small, black, angular device unlike anything they had ever encountered. "I found it in my medkit," he said, "hidden between the sterile gauze, placed exactly where I would reach during an emergency." Zaresh took the device and ran a sweep across all frequencies. Nothing, not a signal. "Could it be an audio recorder?" Kalara asked. "No," Merrick interrupted. "I analyzed the baseline frequencies. It emits ultra-low signals low enough to stimulate the midbrain, possibly to create hallucinations or to awaken dormant memories." Zaresh tightened his grip. "They're manipulating our minds." "No," Thor corrected, his voice dry as ash. "They're not controlling us. They're revealing what we've tried to bury." Then the tactical console lit up. A stream of data began pouring in, not encrypted, not hidden, as if someone wanted them to see it. It was a military file. A human military emblem flickered in the corner of the screen, but one they had never seen before. A skull with 2 stars for eyes. Merrick froze. "That symbol? It's not in any database, but I've heard rumors. This is the Ghost Division," Thor said, eyes fixed on the screen. Zaresh swiped through the file. Video logs played. High quality, unedited. Footage of missions completed but never recorded in any public record. One showed 3 individuals only, 3 breaching a fortified base on a toxic planet, home to over 400 mercenaries. They killed every last one. No alarms were triggered, no bullets wasted. Another clip. A lone operative, tagged Operator 12, infiltrated a rebel command post. 17 high-level targets. all eliminated in a single night. Kalara stared, disbelief etched into every line of her face. Impossible. This has to be data tampering. No, Merrick whispered. I verified the signal. No alteration. Time sinks are real. This is authentic. The room fell into stunned silence. Zaresh nodded slowly. They're not standard special forces. They're engineered with a singular purpose: invisible warfare. Merrick pulled more files. Medical schematics. Reinforced spinal cords. Augmented neural reflex relays. Pain suppression implants. Predictive combat neural interfaces. These weren't just soldiers. They were the outcome of an interplanetary black program. They were created, Merrick said, voice slow, not to win battles but to make sure no one ever dares start one again. Zaresh looked at his hand. For a moment, he felt small, not in stature, but in control. He, the one who had taken down the living tanks of Forge 6 with his bare hands, now stood against an enemy that left no shadows, no sound but etched scars in the mind that couldn't be erased. We need to learn more, he said. If we don't, this won't be a failed mission. It'll be the extinction of the entire mercenary profession. He wasn't exaggerating. And in the eyes of every soldier, Thor included, truth had settled in. This was no longer about how to win. It was about whether escape was even an option. The reverse trap. Zaresh stared at the slowly rotating 3D topographic map, its projection casting a cold yellow gleam into his eyes. The sensor model showed a wide perimeter surrounding the human outposted terrain, multiple high points, few exits. He tapped the interface, rotating the terrain axis. They know every route we might take, he said. So we stop moving. We wait for them. The entire team went still. No one questioned him. No more doubt remained, only the choking weight of despair hanging on every breath. But when Zaresh laid out the plan, they knew, if any chance remained, this was it. We'll set up a false camp, full energy signatures, thermal emissions, simulated biometrics. Everything programmed around a stash of valuable tech enough bait to draw even the most elite unit. And then, Kalara asked, her voice low and loaded like a cocked rifle. Then we wait, Zaresh replied. No response, no mistakes. When they inspect the site, we strike all 8 directions at once, no survivors. That was the plan, their last shot. The team worked tirelessly. Sensor nodes were hidden in every crevice. Simulated biosigns synced with plasma emitters. Layers of stone were carefully chipped to carve out sniper hollows. Marksmen positioned themselves at elevation covering the only possible approach path. When the synthetic son of Osiris 9 dipped behind the purple ridge, the false camp lit up like a flare in the dark. The team vanished into the surrounding rock-siege warrior, holding their breath, dreading the very thing they also hoped would appear. 3 hours passed. Then Kalara whispered, "Movement, west, 2 targets." Zaresh adjusted his tactical scope, and there they were, 2 figures in matte black armor, gliding like phantoms between the boulders. No wasted steps, no noise, no emission. "Hold," Zaresh hissed. "Wait until they reach the camp. Wait for the signal. Do not break formation." The 2 figures neared the cache of exposed equipment set out like bait in a predator's jaws. One knelt to inspect a signal relay. The other made a hand gesture, 3 fingers, circled military code. Precise. Fluent. "They know it's a trap," Thor murmured. "Now!" Zaresh shouted. Every weapon fired simultaneously. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, energy arcs. The entire area erupted into a hurricane of light. Roars, screeches, command saw collided in a burst of chaotic precision. For the first time since arriving on Osiris 9, the mercenaries felt a sense of control. Until it fell apart. One of the soldiers rolled aside, tossing a small pulsing device that unleashed a wave of subsonic energy, disabling 3 sniper sensors in a blink. The other didn't retreat charged, targeting the precise anatomical weaknesses of each species present. A towering Kaleri warrior lunged in with heavy armor and a rotary gun, but the soldier sidestepped, grabbed the alien's momentum, and snapped his neck at an angle that defied logic. No pause, no glance back. Kalara landed a direct shot pierce, the armor-green blood sprayed. But the soldier didn't falter. Through her scope, she looked into murky eye sand, saw no rage, only perfect focus. "I hit the heart," she whispered. "There's no way he's still moving." A low-frequency explosion rippled through the ground. Smoke rose in thick curls. The two figures vanished like they'd never been there. When the haze cleared, 7 mercenaries lay sprawled across the rocks. 3 dead, 4 critically wounded, shattered limbs, collapsed lungs, 1 missing an eye. Zaresh, slashed from shoulder to rib cage, could barely stand. Blood spilled dark orange. But he was still breathing, and that terrified him more than dying. "They knew exactly how to fight each species," Kalara gasped, cradling a twitching comrade. "Targeted the weak points. That wasn't random. They knew our anatomy," one soldier croaked, as if whispering from a tomb. Zaresh looked at his own wound deep. Through muscle butt, it had spared his primary artery. A message, a deliberate restraint. He understood now. This ambush hadn't failed. It had been allowed to fail. A lesson delivered the way the Ghost Division always delivered their messages. Without words, through surgical fear. "We could have been killed," he whispered. "But we weren't. Because the Ghost Division had made a decision, not yet." And that realization was more horrifying than defeat. Sealed files. After retrieving the bodies and stabilizing the wounded, the remaining mercenaries returned to the shipsalant, like walking corpses. In the cold corridors, no one met each other's gaze. No one spoke, not because of pain, but because words no longer held meaning in the face of such helplessness. Zaresh sat in the tactical chamber, wrapping his deep wound with stained bandages, orange blood still wet on his fingers. He stared at the monitor, replaying the last image of the ambush frame by frame, those figures moving at impossible speed, striking with precision beyond known biology. "They weren't fighting," he muttered. "They were performing surgery on the battlefield." Merrick, still mentally unsteady after his collapses, slumped into a chair, his bloodshot eyes sunken. "I've decrypted hundreds of encryption layers in my life, but this," he shook his head, "this doesn't hide anything. It wants to be found." Zaresh frowned. "What do you mean?" "After they retreated, I backtraced the signal from the spy device, the one Thor found in his medkit. It was transmitting data one way. But instead of erasing itself after the upload, it left behind a breadcrumb. A single tap, the screen lit up. A file opened, bearing the long-defunct insignia of the Interstellar Unified Forces beneath it. A faded line, nearly scratched out, Ghost Division, Operational History, Classified Omega Level. Thor stepped in just in time, all 4 of his eyes widening. "I've seen that emblem 30 cycles ago." "Where?" Zaresh asked. "During a diplomatic escort mission. A hostage had been taken at a command center on Vexillion Prime. 20 elite royal guards were deployed. By the time we arrived, every hostage and every captor was dead. No survivors. None of the weapon markings matched ours. But there was a faint video. One silhouette. Just one." Zaresh nodded slowly. "And now we know who it was." Merrick scrolled through the decrypted files. "These are summaries of unverified operations from human military history. Every entry carries the GH designation. Ghost Handler, Ghost Hit, Ghost Hostile. But there's never been a live witness until us." Kalara leaned against the wall, her gaze dark and heavy. "And because we're alive, we've become part of the test." Merrick opened another file. A map of Ghost Division activity over the past 50 years. Red markers bled across the star systems from the outer rim to the political core. In shadows, no record, no remembrance. "Look at the patterns," Merrick whispered. "Every time a star system approached the brink of war, the Ghost Division appeared first, and then peace. Not because they intervened, but because no one dared to start the war. Zaresh slid over to the medical profiles. A list appeared. Neurocombat precognition implant, pain suppression network, V4.3, bone density enhancement, class Delta, dual lung rebreather system, synthetic emotion filtration. They weren't just trained, Zaresh whispered. They were designed. Merrick played an audio log, a woman's voice deep, cold, like wind through frozen stone. The Ghost Division does not represent the human military. They represent humanity's raw survival instinct. Each member is chosen not for physical prowess, but for the capacity to endure, the inhumanity required to win. Kalara yanked her rifle from its holster. In humanity, we've all been monsters before, but that isn't human anymore. Merrick pulled one final file. A data chart listing every mercenary unit contracted to Osiris, 9 over the past 18 months. 5 squads, all missing. They weren't just evaluating the Ghost Division, Merrick said. They were using us to gather data on tactics, response time, survivability. We're test subjects. Zaresh clenched his fist. The wound along his ribs split. Blood flowed again. Our client Helix Corporation knew everything from the beginning. The room was drowned in darkness. No one spoke. No one dared breathe too loud. From mercenaries, they had become lab rats. Every step, every drop of blood was not part of a mission, but part of a system trying to understand just how dangerous humanity could become. Thor laid a hand on Zaresh's shoulder, his voice low. And now we know. But knowing late might be worse than never knowing at all. Betrayal. Zaresh stood silently in the command chamber, his hands still clenched around the freezing metal edge of the control table. The squad hadn't been broken by weapons, but by truth. It wasn't the Ghost Division that had killed them. It was the one who hired them. Open emergency comms, Zaresh said, his voice cold, hammered steel pounding against the heart. A beam of light flared in the air. A familiar silhouette, the faceless projection of the Helix Corporation, representative materialized at the center of the ship's chamber. Still emotionless, still silent, as if no one had died carrying out its orders. Captain Zaresh, the voice echoed, smooth as synthetic oil. We've detected your vessel preparing to depart Osiris 9. Your contract is not complete. I repeat, the contract remains incomplete. Zaresh didn't blink. We're aware. Then why are you withdrawing? He didn't answer immediately. He stared straight through the shadow, as if trying to incinerate it with his gaze. Because you lied. A pause. Then the shadow responded, this time with a harder tone. Your team was selected for its high survival probability. You had a better chance than the teams before. A chance? Kalara cut in, her obsidian eyes flaring with rage. The last 5 teams are dead. We only survived long enough for you to gather your data. Information is a commodity, the shadow replied flatly, and its price is blood. Merrick hissed and slammed a command into the console, projecting a report titled Human Combat Capacity Assessment, Phase 3, Cross-Species Reaction Trials. What did your research call us? He asked, his voice breaking. Multi-species test variables, exo-emotional data points, not soldiers, not contractors. We're statistics in your spreadsheets. Zaresh stepped forward until his face was inches from the projection. You never intended to destroy the Ghost Division. You used us to measure them. How many we'd lose, how fast, how much tech they'd disable, what traces they'd leave behind. And you, Kalara whispered, you tricked us into signing our deaths with credits. The shadow remained silent. Then, slowly, it responded. Your deaths would have been acceptable losses. But if you withdraw now, your reputations will be erased. No mercenary guild in this galaxy will hire a team that abandons a contract. Zaresh took a deep breath. He had heard enough. We are mercenaries, not test subjects, he said. And under Article 47B of the Mercenary Survival Accords, any contract signed under falsified information that endangers life can be nullified. You have no proof, the shadow snapped. We do, Merrick growled. We've extracted all your internal logs, including simulations of each of our death times stamped scenario-based, down to the moment Zaresh was supposed to die. The shadow tilted its head. For the first time, it seemed caught off guard. What you've done violates multiple data secrecy laws? We have the capacity. You don't understand, Thor said, stepping forward from the rear. We fear the Ghost Division more than we fear you. And if the choice is between losing our reputation or becoming nameless corpses buried in the desert, he paused, then finished. We choose to live. Zaresh exhaled slowly, as if purging the ash of betrayal from his lungs. We're terminating the contract. We'll submit every piece of data to the guild. We'll warn every other mercenary crew in the quadrant what awaits them if they ever take a job from Helix Corporation. You wouldn't dare. Zaresh gave a slow, icy smile. I dared to land on a planet haunted by the Ghost Division. And I lived. I'll dare anything. The signal cut. Silence fell across the room. Kalera turned to Zaresh. We're enemies now, of one of the most powerful weapons conglomerates in the galaxy. Maybe, he said, but we're alive, and we know the truth that what they fear isn't us. It's the shadow they sent us here to destroy. Thor nodded slowly. And now, no mercenary will fall into their trap again. Leaving hell, the ship's engines roared to life, pulling waves of gray dust into swirling spirals around the hull. In the control chamber, orange warning lights pulsed like open wounds, refusing to close. Zaresh stood before the navigation panel, his rib wounds still throbbing, but his eyes never left the flight screen. Engage orbital breakaway protocol, he ordered. Kalera nodded, fingers tapping rhythmically against the consolino, longer with the sharp certainty of a killer. She didn't need to say it. The whole team knew. They weren't leaving because they lost. They were leaving because now they understood what truly deserved fear. As the ship began to rise from the ground, an alarm screamed to life. Intrusion detected. Cargo Bay 7. The control room froze. That's impossible, Kalera muttered. We're mid-air. Sensor malfunction? Zaresh asked, his voice pulled taut like wire. Merrick trembled as he adjusted the security feeds. The display lit up. Cargo Bay no image. Just total blackness. No visual data, he stammered. No motion signals. But intrusion is confirmed. Zaresh turned to Thor. What do you think? The old Vexillian warrior was silent. Then he nodded slowly, like stars shifting their position in deep space. They're here, he said. But not to kill, we're still alive, because they want us to be. Kalera drew her weapon, eyes sweeping every doorway. We need to check the bays. No, Zaresh raised a hand. That's what they want. We won't find them. But they will. Leave something behind. 10 minutes later, the alarm ceased. The security panels returned to normal. No breach. No sabotage. Just one thing had changed. Every monitor now displayed a single message written in the native language of each crew member. Contract complete. Exit orbit by 3 o'clock. There will not be a second chance. No threats. No weapons. No corpses. Just truth. A statement. A pardon. And one final blow to the psyche. Zaresh collapsed into the command chair, cold sweat running down his spine. They boarded our ship, bypassed top-tier security while we were airborne just to send a message. One they could have sent remotely. Kalera nodded slowly. They didn't want us to forget they could do this anytime. They don't need to kill, Thor added, just to remind us, if they wanted, we would already be gone. A debate erupted. Should they continue the mission? Should they retreat entirely? Should they take revenge? But Zaresh roared over them all. Enough. Silence. He stood, locking eyes with every soldier each, face smeared with blood, fear, and quiet regret. We were deceived. We were brought here to die, but we survived. Not because we were stronger, but because they allowed us to live. And that is exactly why we must leave. What about our reputation? Someone asked in a near whisper. The guild will blacklist us. Thor stepped forward, scarred shoulders squared like a war-torn monument. He looked at them all. Reputation is for those who haven't seen the truth. But we are witnesses now, and witnesses carry one mission to warn. Zaresh nodded. I'll deliver the data to the guild, all of it, not just to void the contract, but to propose a new rule. The Ghost Division will no longer be myth. They will be a prohibited entity. Merrick input a final command. Navigation, course to Central Guild Station, maximum thrust, skip all checkpoint protocols. The engines screamed louder, lifting the vessel through Osiris 9's pale, hazy atmosphere. Below the dust, the tiny lights of the human outpost still shimmered like eyes, wide open, yet unblinking. Zaresh glanced one last time at the rear display. A faint glint appeared in the distant CNOD, an attack signal. Not a missile, just moonlight reflecting off a black helmet. Someone stood alone in the desert, watching the ship ascend. No pursuit, no salute, no threat. Just observation. Zaresh turned away. We've left hell, he whispered, but what we carry with us will haunt us forever. The warning given? The grand hall of the mercenary guild on the central world of Valcor blazed with the intensity of thousands of eyes. The seating curved in a spiraling ring around the central platform, a place that had witnessed oaths of honor, trials for betrayal, and the elevation of legends. Today, it awaited something unprecedented, a public declaration about the Ghost Division. Zaresh stepped into the spotlight, wearing no armor, carrying no weapon, just a torn, faded uniform, a bandaged arm, and eyes that no longer saw the galaxy the same way. Kalara and Thor stood behind him, along with the other surviving members of the team. They said nothing. They stood as witnesses to what was about to be spoken. Name? Asked a council member, voice deep as boulders grinding in a cavern. Zaresh, captain of the Delta Vortex unit, he answered unblinking. Purpose of this summons? To report a violation of Article 47B contract signed under false information, resulting in near total annihilation of the unit. And to propose a full ban on any contracts involving human special forces, specifically the Ghost Division. Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Some scoffed, some tilted their heads in disbelief. Others solder, scarred, silent, did not speak at all. You make a grave request, one delegate said. What proof do you bring? Zaresh pointed. Merrick activated the device. The massive central screen lit up, displaying every moment captured from Osiris, 9 disappearing scouts, Vex being shot, the ambush turned inside out by 2 nameless soldiers. All data was real, uncut, unaltered. The room went dead silent. Then Zaresh's voice cut through, dry as desert wind. They didn't win through firepower. They won through fear. They broke my best soldiers. Without firing a second shot, they severed our tactical breath, the heartbeat of our strategy, until we collapsed from within. Next came the medical report. Footage of Drin's lifeless eyes, his hand twitching uncontrollably. The cut on Zaresh's ribs halted precisely 0.3 millimeters before the main artery. They didn't kill because they wanted us to remember. Another screen appeared, internal logs from Helix Corporation, clearly stating the project's true objective: combat analysis of Ghost Division performance against multi-species forces. We weren't hired to win, Zaresh said. We were hired to die long enough for the system to collect its data. Then Thor stepped forward. The chamber fell into an even deeper silence, as though time itself paused. I've wielded blades across 30 star systems, he began. I've fought enemies who could crack moons in half, but never have I seen my men cry in their sleep, afraid to close their eyes. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing scars along his arms. I carry wounds from every battle I've survived, except the Ghost Division, because no one lives long enough to get scars from them. The atmosphere froze. Then the Guild Mystera, being older than recorded history, of a species whose name had long been forgotten, nodded. "What do you propose, Zaresh?" Zaresh stepped forward, head high. "Establish a new regulation. All contracts involving human special units, including Ghost Division, are to be blacklisted. Any organization or corporation that attempts to employ them or use mercenaries against them will be denied access to the entire mercenary network." The chamber erupted. Some roared in protest, others laughed bitterly, but most stayed silent. Then one hand rose, then another, a third, a fourth, a line, half the circle. A vote, each hand belonging to those who had slain hundreds, to veterans who had defied time, to young mercenaries still bearing their first blood, was raised. Not for Zaresh, not for Thor, but out of fear of something named the Ghost Division. When the results flashed unanimous approval, no one cheered, because everyone understood. From now on, the Ghost Division was no longer rumor. It was law. After the assembly, a young mercenary approached Zaresh. "Sir, are they really that dangerous? They're just humans." Zaresh looked at the young man, remembering his younger self, the one who used to laugh at the word human, who thought weakness was easy to kill. "You know why I'm still alive?" he asked quietly. The young mercenary shook his head. "Because they let me live, to tell the story. Reputation warfare. 5 years had passed since Osiris 9. On the neutral planet, Avara 6, amidst crimson sand and ash blue skies, a mercenary training base had been built with funding from the guild. At its heart, buried 3 levels below ground, a lecture hall buzzed with the quiet focus of new recruits sitting upright, taking meticulous notes as a tall, bronze-scaled figure stepped onto the platform. "Good day," Zaresh said. His voice no longer thundered like a beast. It was rough, dry, like sand grinding against metal. "I used to be a mercenary. Now, I'm a storyteller." He tapped a button. A display projected the day's lesson plan, assessing contract risk, analyzing unusual targets, and finally, the total ban list. An emblem appeared in mid-air, a skull, its eye sockets replaced by twin stars. The room went still. Zaresh nodded slowly. "Ghost Division." A young soldier, bold and curious, raised his hand. "Sir, they're just humans, right? Why would the entire guild ban all contracts involving them?" Zaresh smiled, not mockingly, but like a man staring at his younger self from across time. "You think power lies in guns, armor, and numbers?" he asked. The room was silent. What makes the Ghost Division powerful is their ability to turn survivors into warnings. He began to recount the story not through reports, but through memory. Of Vex, dropped with a single shot. Of Shiv and Drin, gone without a trace. Of an ambush where 2 human soldiers reduced 7 alien warriors to broken, motionless flesh. When he described how the Ghost Division boarded a flying ship mid-air to leave behind a surveillance device unnoticed, no one in the room even shifted in their seat. "They don't come to fight," he said. "They come to teach you there are battles you should never begin." A cadet asked timidly, "They really let you live, just to tell the story?" Zaresh nodded. "They don't want blood, they want reputation, because in this galaxy, fear travels faster than any explosion." The class ended. The recruits left in silence. But Zaresh's stories, it had in countless sessions before, would live another life inside every mind that had heard it. That night, Zaresh sat alone in a bar at the edge of the training outpost. The liquor poured slow. The lights were dim. No music. No talking. A breeze slid through the window just as the door opened. A human man entered. Short brown hair. A plain black coat. No visible weapons. No insignias. Nothing remarkable except the way he walked. Every movement was precise. Unnaturally precise. Zaresh didn't need to ask. "Ghost Division," he murmured. The man sat across from him. "Retired, like you, name's Michael." They sat in silence, drinking without finishing. Eventually, Zaresh asked, "You could have killed all of us, but you didn't. Why?" Michael smiled, not cold, not smug, just calculated. "Dead men stay silent," he said. But the living tell stories, and those stories do the work we no longer have to. Zaresh nodded slowly. So, that day, on Osiris 9, how many of you were actually there? Michael looked sideways, his gaze steady and unblinking. 4. 2 wounded. The others were recovering. Zaresh felt his chest sink, not out of shame, but because of the ratio. 4 people, 2 injured, and still they had decimated his unit. And if you'd all been at full strength? He asked, voice nearly a whisper. Michael didn't answer immediately. Then he spoke soft as a ghost, whispering into the ear of history. You wouldn't be here to ask. He stood, walked away as if he'd never been there at all. Zaresh remained, glass untouched. He knew Ghost Division was still out there. They didn't need to show up. They didn't need to fight, because their victory had already been planted inside the minds of every survivor. And in dark rooms across the galaxy, corporations would continue searching for mercenaries mad enough to take a contract against humanity. But all would refuse. Not because of law, but because of legend. The Ghost Division had achieved what no army ever could. Total victory, not through bullets, but through reputation.